Hello guys, today I'm going to show you how to make this absolutely beautiful knitted but without knitting checker pattern. And in between the checker patterns you can see like little hearts in between. It's super cute, but we're going to be using a Tunisian knit stitch, so we just need regular yarn and your regular crochet hook, or if you have a Tunisian crochet, that'll be better. But for starters, we're going to chain 10, and I'm going to chain in this solid color, even though it's a checker pattern, just to to make it easier for myself. But if you were to make this pattern, you can always tweak it to your liking. But again, chaining 10. So for our Tunisian knit stitch, we're going to work onto the back of our chains. So as you can see, if you turn it ever so slightly, you'll see little bumps on the back, which we're going to work onto. We're going to skip this very first bump and we're going to go straight to the next one. The reason why is just because the stitch that we already have on our hook counts as one, so that bump corresponds to this stitch, so we don't need to use that bump. So of course, one stitch, two stitches, and we should end up with 10 stitches at the end of this round. And now that we have our 10 stitches in our hook, we're going to chain one onto the very last stitch, and we're going to yarn over and pull through pairs. So pulling through two of our stitches and two of our stitches and two and two and two. And for this pattern, we're going to need only two different color yarn, but for this very last stitch, we're going to remove it. I'm going to not complete that very last stitch, and I'm going to introduce my second color, which is this pale yellow, and I'm going to just yarn it over and finish that row with my new color. And as you can see now, with my very next row, I'm going to start with this yellow yarn. So this is going to be my very first stitch. But since we're going to do that hard in between that checker pattern, this is going to be kind of like the portion of those little hearts. So I'm going to insert my hook in between this stitch. So I'm just going to insert my hook all the way through in between that front and back pieces of yarn of this very next stitch, yarning over, pulling through, and that's actually, we're going to be switching colors back and forth. So again, introducing our hook and pulling through, and then switching again with our green, and once more with our yellow. And then the rest of our row is just going to be purely green. And our very last stitch, making sure to catch those two loops that form at the very end of our row. We pull and then we pull. We always chain one onto that very last stitch, and then we pull through pairs until we reach two different color stitches in our hook. So at this point there's one color and then there's a second color. We always use that second color whenever this happens. So we're going to yarn over with our yellow. And again, since we have two different colors, we always use that second color. And then our yellow color, and then our green color. However, since we want to start our next row with our green, instead of pulling with the yellow, we're going to pull with the green. So this will be my very first stitch in our next row. And then what we want is have our very next stitch be yarned over with our yellow yarn. And then our next yellow stitch be yarned over with our green yarn. And as you can see, you start to see these checker pattern forming. However, we will continue to yarn over with our green for the remainder of our 5 stitches here. Chaining 1, and we continue to yarn over or pulling through with our pairs and changing colors when appropriate. Of course, it looks a little bit funky, but you should always trust the process. It's looking good. I don't love it, but I just don't want to knit at any cost, right? But as you can see, look at those little actual knitting stitch that's forming. I think it's beautiful. However, as always, since we want to start with the opposite color, we should end our row with the color that we want to start with. And we're actually going to continue to do this for the next 3 rows. So we should end up with actual 6 rows of this pattern that I'm following and that I'm showing you guys, and then I'll meet you back to switch the colors. And now, as promised, after you've done your 6 rows of this actual pattern, we're going to switch colors. And of course, we always start with the color that we want. So we're going to invert. We're going to switch our colors and invert. So now we're going to do this side with a solid yellow color, only for 5 stitches. And then we're going to start with this heart. I call it a heart pattern. Looks like hearts to me. So switching colors back and forth like we've been doing. It's very therapeutic. I know it's not a perfect knitting. It doesn't look perfect as knitting does, but I don't really like knitting. I am not sure why. It just so happens to be very hard keeping the tension right for me. I know it's probably because I'm not practicing enough, or I'm being too ambitious, or I'm just not being patient, because knitting takes a very long time to complete. And as you can see, we have absolutely just automatic satisfaction with this Tunisian knit stitch, and we just continue, and it looks beautiful. It's just a startup. It's a little swatch. Of course, you can make it bigger into patches, an actual sweater. You do what you want to do with this pattern, and of course down below, it's always in the description, the Pinterest pattern that I'm following, or you can always pause this video, take a screenshot of the knitting chart on screen, and I hope you had fun.